Good morning everyone. It is another day. I'm quite a bit further south now on what is I guess the Alaska Highway, but further south, so it's not actually called the Alaska Highway. And I found this place to camp last night and ended up having some misadventures. You can see the max tracks are out. There's ice on those. It got below freezing overnight. And unfortunately I was trying to find somewhere to camp, and it was getting darker and darker. You can see I've got all the recovery gear out and some mud caked on to show for my adventures. So let me show you what happened. It was getting darker and, you know, I was pushing on trying to find somewhere to camp. And so I found this kind of abandoned, overgrown track. Looks like it's been pushed through by tracked machinery. And as I was driving down it, I'm pretty close to the highway still, I can hear it. And so I thought, oh, well, I'd rather find somewhere quieter, you know, so I can't hear the traffic. And my GPS showed that I was slowly getting further from the highway as I came down this road. So in my usual fashion, I just thought, oh, I'll just keep going a little bit further, a little bit further. And every time I got to a spot that might have worked to camp, I thought, oh, why don't I go another few hundred yards and see what's further? You know, maybe I'll find a better spot or a quieter spot. So it's getting darker and darker, and I'm crawling down this road. And let me just show you, I'll speed this up as I walk further. So I got to this spot and I thought, this isn't really ideal. I'm kind of on an angle and there's a bit of a switchback here in the road. So I thought I'll just nose down the switchback and turn around. And that's where my problem started. So I had no idea how slippery it is in here. I hadn't yet gotten out of the Jeep. And so I nosed down and immediately realized there was no chance I was driving out of this. So even with both lockers on, four-wheel wheel spin was the order of the day. I was not going anywhere. You can see there's one of my divots where I was trying to reverse. And so max tracks and shovel out, and they did absolutely nothing. This is so slippery, it made no difference at all. And in my infinite wisdom, I decided, oh, why don't I just go down a little further and then try and get a running start at it, and that'll get me over this tricky spot. Well, of course, it just got worse and worse and slipperier. So here I was, it was about 8 o'clock, it was dark, and the Jeep was well and truly not moving anywhere here in this steep spot. And so I started to wonder about hiking out. I started to, you know, stress, what am I gonna do? And luckily for me, I came up with a plan and it worked. So what I did, the Jeep was pointing forward that way. I winched up this way to these trees and I basically pivoted the Jeep on the spot. And that's what all of this muck is right here. The slipperiness worked to my advantage, in fact, because while winching forward, all four wheels were spinning and the whole Jeep just swung around like this. So the bottom, the rear tires, ended up down the hill, and the nose at first was pointing at the bank, then it was pointing a bit uphill. And then I walked all the way up and I winched off those far trees and I was able to get the nose pointing back uphill. So that really is what got me out of this. And then from there, it was just a matter of slow and steady winching. I had to winch all of this to one of these trees straight ahead to eventually climb up this hill. And then when I got to about here, I moved the winch point over to these trees and started winching in that direction. And you can see none of this was easy. I made some carnage. I'll come back with a shovel and fix this in a minute. But you can see this was quite, this took me maybe an hour, hour and a half. And to further complicate things, when I was right in the middle of the most difficult winch pull, the battery light on the Jeep came on and the alternator started whining and making some crackling noises. So after 180,000 miles on the Jeep and about 10 years of, you know, hard adventure through Africa, I would say the alternator has finally died and it's time for me to get a new one. So stressful because then the battery voltage is dropping so low that the winch was hardly working and I still wasn't able to drive any of this. This is all just wheel spin here. And so I decided I just didn't turn the Jeep off for the whole operation, leaving it idling, and kept revving it to try and build the volts back up and get the alternator to do something. And so just slow and steady, I managed to winch every single meter of this to trees that were further and further away. And eventually I got myself out of this, you know, maybe it was about 9 o'clock when I was finished. So bit of a crazy adventure, and it means I'm gonna have to try and get an alternator today. I'm about half an hour away from a town that will have a napper. So fingers crossed they have an alternator and I'll just throw a new one in. Ideally I'd get it on Rock Auto, but that'll take a week to get here and I'd rather be on the move. So quick lessons learned for me and for you. When it's the end of a long driving day, don't push your luck looking for a wild camp. This is the second time now. I remember vividly what happened the first time. I need to get out of the Jeep, have a drink of water, and think about what I'm doing before I drive the Jeep, you know, into something like this for a second time. Well, a third time, I guess. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two, when I got to this spot, what I should have done is turned around in the other direction. I should have nosed ahead that way and then reversed down this little incline. At that point, I probably would have been stuck, but then I wouldn't have had to turn the Jeep around, which is a huge advantage, and the nose would have been very, very close to all of these trees here and all the trees this way that I could have used to slowly pull it back up and around this turn. So next time I get to something like this, I have to think more about which way am I turning around, what's going to be easiest to use the winch. And third lesson, once again, the winch absolutely saved my bacon. If not for the winch, there's no way the Jeep was ever getting out of here under its own steam. I would have needed someone to come and help me. And it occurred to me, you know, that vehicle would have needed a winch, and there's every chance that vehicle itself would have gotten stuck. So, I mean, other than tracked machinery, I don't know that really it would have been possible to get the Jeep out of here. So yeah, winch once again. I will never leave home without one again, and goes to show you have to keep your brain in gear. It's more important than having the right vehicle, is make sure you're always using your brain. So I'm going to keep adventuring south. Things are getting more interesting, and I'm going to keep my eyes out for an alternator, and hopefully I can throw a new one in. Should only take me half an hour, and I'll be back on the road full steam ahead. And so I was able to do just that. The Jeep fired up no problem. I limped it for about half an hour, and I found a parts store that was open on Canadian Thanksgiving. I threw in a new alternator. It only took about half an hour, and the Jeep's been running great ever since. So did my dual batteries contribute to the downfall of the alternator? Probably. It definitely puts more strain on it to have to charge both batteries. But to be honest with you, most days in Africa, I would say the auxiliary battery was full or nearly full by the time I started the engine anyway, because the solar panels were getting so much sun in the morning. So although the batteries do put a bit of extra strain on my alternator, I don't necessarily think they did it a lot of harm. Probably what's worse is just all the mud and all of the dust that was inside that thing. And you know, 10 years old, 180,000 miles, I'm not too upset about having to throw in a new alternator. So it was relatively easy and got me back on the road. Of course, it makes sense for my final night on a trip to Alaska. I woke up in the morning to a good covering of snow on the Jeep and the whole tent, and I scampered down the hill and I soaked in the hot spring that I was camping at. It was kind of my reward to myself after such an awesome trip. So to recap the whole thing, I'm back home now. I'm just near the border of the US in southern Canada, and in total I drove 9,850 kilometers, which is just a touch over 6,000 miles. So keep in mind that's from the US-Canada border, and I basically went all the way to the border of Alaska in a few different places, and I went up into the Arctic Circle just to the border of the Northwest Territories. So if you're going to drive all the way up to Prudhoe Bay on the Dalton Highway, you're going to explore the Kenai Peninsula, you'll drive further than I did, plus you'll drive however far you do in Canada or the US, depending on where you live. So 6,000 miles is going to be the minimum that you'll drive on your Alaska adventure. So that means make sure you have enough time. I did the whole thing in a month, but I was kind of rushing a bit because I knew the weather was closing down and I really wanted to get up there. But my advice, as always, slow down, enjoy the trip. Don't try and cram it into a month. I would say 2 months, 3 months is even better. So take your time when you plan your Alaska trip. A couple of things that come to mind. People always say you can't drive the highway and get away without cracking your windshield. there's just so many rocks on the road and grit when winter comes. And it's true, I did pick up a few cracks along the way, so might have to get a new windshield soon. The one over there in the middle, that's been there since last winter, but this one here is brand new just from this Alaska trip. And unfortunately it's heading right out into the middle, so not ideal. And then over here, right in front of my eyes as the driver, there's this chip that is starting to spread a little bit. So I'm gonna go and get that seen to straight away, see if they can stop that growing. And just looking closely, I did hear a huge rock impact at one point. Check this out, way down in the bottom corner of the windshield. Look at this massive big crack. Oh, pieces of glass actually just came off on my finger. So I might put some silicone on that and keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't grow, because that would kill the whole windshield. Not only do you get rock chips, you know, it's gonna damage your paint as well. So like I said, if you've got a brand new vehicle and you love the paint, well, it might not look so good when you get home. So I've just been looking around the Jeep, and all of these rock chips here, these are brand new from the Alaska trip. And you can see this has gone all the way down. This has taken off all of the paint. So all of Africa, this never happened. This is purely driving up to Alaska and back in just 6,000 miles has done that. So your vehicle's gonna take a bit of a beating, but of course it's worth it. Animal check, I did see a whole bunch of stuff. I saw a few grizzlies, I saw a bunch of black bears, I saw moose, none of which are in my freezer, but let's not talk about that. Some caribou, I saw a couple of lynx, which is a rare sight to see. I was excited to see those. So overall, I thought I would see more wildlife given how quiet it is this year with coronavirus, but I did kind of see everything. Those bison, obviously. I saw some mountain sheep, some mountain goats, so plenty of wildlife. And you know, if you're thinking about the trip and you're still not sure, I really recommend have a look at the comments on these videos I've been posting. So many people are posting comments like, you know, I did that drive, I went up the Dempster, I saw the Arctic Circle, I went to Alaska. It was the best adventure of my life. More than one person has posted that, and that just tells you how epic it really is and how much you should prioritize it. And look, I know it's hard, we all have to go to work, we've all got jobs. If you want to make this trip happen, there's only one way to do it, and that's with some hard work and some determination. Start putting money away right now to budget for your trip, and if you need to, go to your boss this week and say, hey boss, look, I have this trip that is my dream, I really want to make it happen. How do we work towards me getting 3 months off in the summer? What is it going to take for me to have June, July, and August off work? And maybe it won't be next year, maybe it won't even be the year after that, but find a way to negotiate with your boss, get the time off work and make the trip happen. You're gonna remember it for the rest of your life, that is a fact. Some other housekeeping stuff, if you'd like GPS track logs of where I went, I'm gonna make those available to my supporters on Patreon. So check out the link down in the description. For just $2 a month, you can support me and help me bring these videos to you guys. And I'm going to give back. You'll get GPS tracks, and I'm going to offer some other things as well. So I have the tracks from my Alaska trip. I also have tracks from Northeast Africa when I was there. I don't have my whole Africa trip, unfortunately, but I have some of it. And in the future, I'll be publishing the GPS tracks of my future expeditions around the globe. So that'll be exclusive for Patreons. One question that came up, someone said, if you drive the highway in winter, do you have to worry about fuel additives? And no, you don't. That has already been added to all of the fuel that you can buy once winter comes along. To the gasoline and the diesel, it has additives to stop it freezing. If it gets super, super cold, you want to try and keep your tank above half full. I guess if your tank was nearly empty, there is a chance that it can freeze when it's below about -45. And certainly if you have a diesel, people do have trouble with them past about -40, -45. The diesel does this thing called waxing, where it actually starts to sort of go gel-like. And so lots of people wind up putting in some sort of diesel heater. That might be part of your filtration setup. Again, you only need to worry about that if you're going in the dead of winter. My advice, June, July, August, you don't need to worry about it. It's not going to be cold. So I really hope you've enjoyed this Alaska series. I hope it's inspired you to get out there and have your own adventures. I'll go back to my format now of Overland University, teaching you guys what you need to know to get out on your own adventures. In the meantime, huge thanks to my supporters on Patreon. These people are helping bring these videos out. They're helping me pay for gas in the tank and camera gear. So please do consider supporting me there. Every little bit helps. And if you do like my channel, make sure you're subscribed. Don't miss future videos. Hit that thumbs up button. And, you know, let's all get ready. Winter's coming, but we can keep planning, we can keep saving and organizing, and fingers crossed the world gets a little bit back to normal next year and we'll all be able to get out on more and more adventures. So, as always, thanks for watching, enjoy the road, and maybe I'll bump into you out there.